how do I stop thinking about food all the time? I just want to say I completely relate to this question, because when I was really struggling in my worst state of bulimia, I would wake up thinking about food. I'd worry about it all day. Every moment that I wasn't focused on something else, I was thinking about, worrying about, obsessing about how much should I eat? Have I eaten too much? When should I start eating? What's the right thing to eat? Have I been bad or good today? It was my endless obsession, and paired with the urges to constantly eat and the nagging feeling of hunger, it was a nightmare. And one of my absolute aha moments when I went down this path of recovery was when I was sitting on my bed one day and I asked myself, Bennett, what do you actually want? And I heard the answer loud and clear. I just want to eat when I'm hungry. I want to stop when I'm full. And I want to stop worrying about it endlessly in between. And what came to me next is I realized I had to treat it a bit like triathlon. I was a triathlete at the time, and I knew that triathlon's a series of skills. And if recovery was a skill set, what would that look like? And I broke it down. And the question that I got today was essentially that third skill, isn't it? It's how do I stop thinking about food? Which is a bit like saying, how do I stop thinking about the purple elephant? I'm going to teach you today, I'm going to run through the ways that I did it and how to really break through of that mental obsession and constant worry and thinking about food. Before we continue, for those of you who are new here, my name's Helen Bennett. I struggled with bulimia for 20 years, and what I do now is I help people quit all the obsession and compulsion around food. Now, obviously I had a very extreme version of compulsion and obsession. You may not be in that camp. Maybe this is something that only bothers you every now and again. If it is, even better for you, because this is going to work like gangbusters. All right, let's get started. So you want to stop thinking about food. So how do you stop thinking about food? Because even just thinking about not thinking about food makes you think about food. Okay, first, we're going to stop thinking that we're not allowed food. So what I want you to do is to ditch the diet. If you're actually on a diet, quit it. If you're just thinking restrictively, that counts too. So any diet restrictive thinking, that's what I want you to stop. And the reason you do that is because the more we think we can't have something, the more we obsess about it. So step one is to ditch the diet mindset or the actual diet. Now that might be scary, and I understand that's a whole nother video on that. But trust me, this works. The more you allow yourself, you give yourself, step number 2, radical permission, just mentally. You don't have to actually just go and eat everything. But mentally you say to yourself, you know what, if I really, really want the thing I think I shouldn't have, if that's what my body's asking for, then that's what I'll have. When you combine those two things, you will feel that 80% of the worry and the fear and the obsession around food will begin to dramatically decrease, because you've done one simple thing. You've taken away the scarcity. You've said, I'm not going to restrict. If I'm hungry, I'll eat, and I'll eat what my body wants and whatever it wants. Radical permission. Now, as I say, I understand how scary that might be for some people. I get it. I really, really do. But this, trust me, is the key. And ironically, the more you give yourself radical permission to eat what your body asks for, the less you will want it. And the opposite is true. The more you think you can't have something, the more you will drive up the desire. And I've shot a few videos about this, about how the more we think we can't have something, the more we want it. It's what marketers use all the time to get us to buy things. You know, you've got to have it now. Last chance, only a few left. When we think like that around food, we equally drive up the desire, the obsession, and the need for something that maybe we don't actually need. So when we do just these two things, we turn off the diets, we ditch all our diets, and we say, you know what? I'm going to give my body what it needs. We begin to set up the mental space where the desire for food is dramatically decreased, just because we don't think, just because we're giving ourselves permission to eat. You'll see this is like game changer stuff. Now, the next question you might ask, well, Helen, but what if I just want to eat everything well, I'm going to tell you, if you watch the masterclass, it's dead easy. Go to my website, you'll see the link to access it. It's a 90-minute class, and with that comes a bonus training where I really dive deep into this with you. But essentially, what I've learned and what I teach all my clients is when we learn to reconnect with our actual hunger and our actual fullness, And when we get a really good relationship with our body and we get really connected into hearing, and it's a practice, you'll have to practice, to hearing what it is your body actually wants, you will notice that for the most part it wants whole foods, healthful foods, however you define them. It generally wants to be nourished and all. Sometimes it wants sweet, sometimes it wants savory. But when you start listening to your body, you will notice that you don't always want the foods you were so afraid of. So all the foods you thought you weren't allowed, when you give yourself radical permission and you combine that with actually hearing your body's actual cravings, your body's cravings, not your mind's, not the ones that were driven by scarcity. When you allow that, what you notice is your body is generally asking for really good stuff. And you'll be delighted, you'll be surprised, you'll be excited, because you start to think, oh, my body wasn't actually trying to screw me all this time. It was probably more the mindset about what I thought I wasn't allowed, that was causing the trouble. So dive into the masterclass if this is all new for you. All the tools you need are there to begin practicing these steps. But now let's go on to the next one. So you've taken away the mental restriction and you've given yourself radical mental permission. If your body asks for pizza, you're going to have pizza. If your body wants salad, you'll have salad. If your body wants cookies, you'll have cookies. And you'll get really clear on exactly how much. And when you get that right, you'll know, because you start to feel calm and satiated a lot of the time. And you can imagine that when you're getting that right, the distraction of hunger isn't there, because now you're feeding yourself appropriately. So you're not getting that nagging actual hunger that interrupts and interferes with your day. But also because you think, well, if I wanted it, I could have it. You get that lovely place of calm, and all your focus is available to you to put into something else. So that's what the next piece is. What I did, because I found this so challenging after 2 decades of bulimia, and it was a chronic problem for me. What I did is I found it so scary not to know when I could think about food, is I just set alarms. And you can steal this idea from me, please go ahead. I set alarms for every 2 hours, and how I trained myself not to think about food is as follows. When the alarm went off, I thought about food. I decided to check in with my body and see if I was hungry. And if I was, then I'd give myself radical permission, and this was tricky, but it came with practice, to have what it was my body was asking for. So I was training myself to reconnect with my hunger, to hear what it was asking, and then be open to eating whatever it asked for. And often it's not hungry, it didn't ask for anything. But every 2 hours I was training myself, I would put my focus into my hunger and into food. In between those alarms, my job, if I noticed myself thinking about food, my job is the minute I caught myself thinking about food, I would just bring my attention back to whatever I was focused on. So a lot of people will say, distract yourself, go and do this, go and do that. I say, no. The whole point of this journey is to actually get your life back. So when I caught myself thinking about food, I just bring my attention back to whatever it was I was doing. Maybe I'm having a conversation with somebody. Maybe I was writing an email. Maybe I'm watching TV. Maybe I'm washing the dishes. Maybe I'm going for a run. I would just try and bring all of my energy and attention back to what it was I was doing. Now, this is really important again to underline, that the importance of all of this work is that you're actually feeding yourself appropriately. If you are undernourishing your body, those hunger pangs will not go anyway, because your body is screaming, I need to be fed, I need to be fed, I need to be fed. And that's why we've got to ditch the diet and go with radical permission, so that we can get to the point that our body's actually comfortable. Doesn't need to be stuffed, full, neutral, maybe a little bit hungry, but where you could easily just pull your attention back to whatever it is that you're doing. Now, you might notice when you start this that your attention keeps being drawn back to food, keeps going back to food. Just bring it back. The worst thing you can do is think, oh, I'm terrible, I'm failing. No, you recognize that for so long you've been thinking and obsessing about food that it is now your mental habit to do so. And the way to change that is to just begin practicing. And what you will discover is maybe the first few days you're trying this, and in that 2-hour window between meals, or between tummy check-ins, you're endlessly thinking about food, and you have to keep bringing it back, keep bringing it back. And what I would do is I would actually have a notepad, a journal, anything, you can use your phone, and every time you catch yourself thinking about food, just quickly log it, just go boom, and then it happens again, boom. And you'll just notice that if you're logging it, every time you catch yourself thinking about food, You make the note and then just bring your attention back to whatever it is you're doing. And the first week you might notice you've got so many of these. They're everywhere. And then over time you'll notice you're hardly ever thinking about food. And if you do it like I did with alarms, you will start to notice that your body will automatically switch on and start thinking about foods at the exact times that your alarms went off. And in between that, it will just completely switch off. That's the power of training. So you're going to begin the mental training of thinking about food only at certain times and practicing getting your energy and attention off food in between those times. And when you catch yourself thinking about food, just log it and then put your attention back on the life that is in front of you. You can, if it becomes hard to refocus, absolutely distract yourself. Phone a friend, go for a walk, go for a swim, whatever you need to do. Get out of there, sit in your hands, I don't mind. But this is important. And over time you'll get really good at it. So it's not what can I distract myself with, it's what am I doing right now? Let's get my attention back there. Okay, so I set alarms. You don't have to, but a lot of my clients find this really helpful. And what that does subconsciously is it starts to train our body to only think about food at certain times. Now, will you need to use the alarms forever? No. After a while, you get bored. The alarms will start driving you nuts. And you'll find that you've stopped thinking about food all the time in between meals. And it will be so automated that you can take the alarms away. And this is when it gets really exciting, because when those alarms stop and you've got into a rhythm and you're not obsessing about it anymore, you're eating when you're hungry, you're stopping when you're full, you're listening to your body, you're not restricting in any way, and your mind is now calm and relaxed because it knows food is coming. She's going to check in with me in a couple of hours. I don't need to panic. Even if I'm hungry, the food's on its way. She's always checking in, and if I'm hungry, she's giving me what I need. So you'll see that over time, the alarms will just get boring. You can always return to them if life ever gets a bit worrying or you find yourself feeling a bit obsessed with food again. Just get the alarms going again. You've always got that there for you. But trust me, after a while, it'll be so automatic, you won't need them. You've now trained yourself to think about food there, and not there, not in between. And what you'll also start to find is you'll be so good at not thinking about food that you will naturally go beyond those alarm times. So I started every 2 hours. I had to think about food because if I didn't, I started to get nervous that I was going to restrict again. My body almost sensed I was maybe on a diet, which I wasn't, but it was thinking, ew, is she trying to restrict me because she's trying to not think about food? So every 2 hours was my window. You might start with every 3, every 4, every 5. It doesn't matter, you choose. But what I discovered when I took the alarms away is I naturally started to just wake up when my hunger woke up. So maybe I've noticed a pattern. Hey, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I had an alarm going off, but I was never really hungry. And I just naturally started to breeze past that to the next time zone. And over time, I started to really discover my body's natural cycles. And it's still to this day amazing to me. There are times in my life, and it's to do with hormones, the weather, the time of year, how light and dark it is. There are times in my life where I'm just naturally not hungry. And there are times in my life when I'm more hungry. And what I discovered to my great joy was my natural rhythm was to not be that hungry until about 10 o'clock every morning. And it took putting the system and the structure in place for me to discover that. It actually took a structure. And when we took the structure away, my body was finding its own rhythms. Because why? It was trusting that food was coming. So it's kind of going back to that beginning. When your body begins to trust through evidence that the starvation has ended, she's going to feed me what she wants when it's appropriate, what I want when it's appropriate, and she's always just going to do that. So I don't need to constantly harass her. You discover is your body starts settling into its own rhythms. And oftentimes people will tell me it turns out that they are natural intermittent fasters, which is no surprise because of course we are. It's only the obsession about all the things we think we're not allowed that forces us to have to try and create barriers and restrictions around our food, which of course make the problem even worse. I hope that made sense. So the more we think we can't have something, the more obsessed we become with it, and the more we try and control it and squash it down and stop at 8 o'clock and only eat after 10. But actually, when you do this letting go process through a structure, you'll discover that your body has its own natural rhythms. And I bet you are some kind of intermittent faster. It might be certain times of the year. It might be a rhythmic thing every day. But you'll discover that it comes so naturally and you didn't have to force it. So the short answer to that glorious question is, how do I stop thinking about something? Is you create a structure and you train yourself. The minute you catch yourself thinking about the food or the purple elephant or whatever, just bring your attention back. And with practice, it'll become your automatic pilot. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, let me know. I'd love to hear all about it. If you have any further questions, go ahead and pop them in the comments and I'll make another video. And if you'd like to find out more, you can go to helenbennett.co. You can book a call with me or grab that masterclass. It's a great place to start if you really want to go deep on the topic of food freedom, intuitive eating, and really reclaiming our life from this obsession and compulsion with food. All the best. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.